Alright, welcome back. My Tom Films Project Attacker. In today's video, we're going to go over how to rebuild a B-Series engine for the first time. Now, I just got done rebuilding my poor man's Type R-ish engine, and the reason why I say ish is because, yeah, I kind of use GSR cams, but those were only temporary, and they are getting swapped out in the 2018 season. But anyways, like I was saying, today we're going to talk about rebuilding. And I got this video request a few times from a few people, not too many. But I figured, you know what, it was time for me to sit down, write everything down, and just make a video for you guys. That way, you know, maybe somebody else could use some help. And I know there's one other video out there on YouTube about somebody rebuilding a B-Series engine, but it like cuts off after like 2 minutes and they want you to buy some book or something like that. That's whack. Come on, man, like actually help people out. So we're going to start off with talking about the fundamentals of basically what an engine generally will have that's like, I guess you can consider it to be a main component. We have the bare block or the long block or the short block, whatever you want to call it, the head, the transmission, pistons, crankshaft, camshafts, valve train, oil pump, water pump, and a timing belt. Those are like the things you need to know, and you need to know what each one does. And if you don't know that already, you should probably not build the engine now. You should probably research what that is, and then you should be ready to hop into the whole rebuilding thing. But before you even start researching anything, I think it's best for you to buy How to Rebuild a B-Series Engine, which is on the App Store. I have it on my phone right now. Let me pull it up. It's How to Rebuild Honda B-Series Engines from Jason Su, Cartech Inc., 2008, and it costs, like I said, $10, which isn't a lot at all. It goes over everything I'm about to talk about in this video, which is going to be helpful for you because I didn't do everything myself. Don't know every single tool that I used, so I think that this book will be really helpful for you guys who don't know, you know, what tools you need and what specs you need to go to. Like, the book goes over everything, but not too many people know about the book. So I figured, you know what, maybe I should make a video, talk about the book, and then, you know, just go from there. So now that you understand what everything pretty much does, you can begin to rebuild this engine of yours. So you have two options, and one of them is rebuilding from scratch, while the other one is, you know, rebuilding an existing engine. Most of you, I'm assuming, are going to do the existing engine rebuild because the from scratch method isn't the most logical. You know, it's going to cost you a lot more. It's going to take a lot more time, but if you rebuild from scratch, you know, I think you'll have a better understanding of how engines are put together and how they work versus, you know, already having one and stripping it down and then just, you know, basically rebuilding it. But, you know, it's personal preference at that point, and it's just, you know, whatever you want to do. So before you start buying parts, find a reputable shop. Now, if you're in Maryland, somewhere near the Baltimore area, I highly recommend Burtonsville Performance and Machine. That's the machine shop that I went to. Now, don't go to any tuner shops because what they're going to do is they're going to refer you. They're actually not even going to refer you. They're going to ask for your parts, and then they're going to take the parts to their machine shop, and then they're going to charge you more than what the machine shop will cost, you know, if you just brought it there upright. So make sure you take it directly to the machine shop. Don't ship it anywhere. You know, just take it to a local place that's good. Now, it's okay to ship it. If you have money and that's not a problem, you want to take it to the best of the best, you know, by all means, ship it out. But not all of us have that kind of money to just ship out blocks and stuff and just wait. And like, no, I want to go there, meet the people, understand what they're all about, get my stuff, pay for it, and take it back home. That's just how I roll. So now that you found a machine shop, now it's time to break everything down. So you have to take everything apart if you have an existing engine. And what I mean by everything, I mean everything. Nothing should be assembled at all. And the reason for that is because you want to rebuild an engine, right? Well, you got to take everything out. That means the pistons, the crankshaft, the head, the rod, or the head bolts, I believe they're called in OEM engines. You don't have to disassemble the head, really. I'd actually recommend that you leave that alone. The reason for that is because lapping valves is not fun. We'll get to that later in the video, but head work is not fun. So just remember that, and we're gonna keep going here. So now that you have a block ready to go, it's stripped down completely. Now you would take it to the machine shop. But before we take it to that machine shop, let's hop back on over to the people who are doing this from scratch. Now, if you have a bare block, or if you're about to buy a bare block, inspect it very, very thoroughly, because if you don't, you are going to mess everything up. The bare block is the go-to thing for the whole entire engine. So if you screw that up, it's game over. You lose. A bare block has to have, no chips, nicks, deep gouges in the cylinder walls. You want the deck of the head, which is the top of the or the top of the block, to kind of be flat. You don't want to see any nicks in the sleeve or the sleeves. You don't want to see nicks anywhere on top of the block. And really, you shouldn't see too much rust. Now, mine had rust in it, and I thought that was bad, but we'll get to what the machine shop does to all that later. So now that you have a block, it's time for you to buy pistons. Now, pistons are going to range you from, $100 to $300, given, what you pay for it. Now, if you want some OEM-ish stuff, if you're doing just an OEM rebuild, I highly recommend you go onto eBay, and it's a seller by the name of Yui Nara, I believe, and they sell Nippon Racing pistons. Now, these aren't the OEM manufacturing company. It's kind of like a third-party thing, but they make good stuff, and it's in my car right now, and I have no problems with it. And it's been around for years and years and years, so you should be fine with that. Next, you're going to need piston rings. Now, these Nippon Racing pistons come with Hastings piston rings, and I took my bottom end to be assembled at Absolute Performance, and when he was doing the assembly, he said that the Hastings piston rings were actually scraping my cylinder walls, which meant that I had to get Wiseco piston rings. So just a heads up, it's hit or miss with these piston rings, so I just recommend you buy Wiseco piston rings, because that's what I have in my car right now, and there was no scratches ever since. So next, you need bearings. Now, a lot of people will say, just get ACL bearings, and they'll tell you to get ACL race bearings. And the problem I have with that is that the clearances on the ACL race bearings were a little too loose for an OEM rebuild, and I wasn't okay with that, because to spin a bearing in an engine is probably the worst thing that could possibly happen. So buying a good set of bearings is very, very important. And the one I recommend is the ACL standard bearings. So it's going to be like a gray box with like blue. It's going to be like a gray box with like blue markings here and there. So it's not the orange one, the black and orange one. Don't get that one. And you want ACL standard, not ACL race. ACL standard, I believe, is the green OEM marked bearing type. So it's kind of, they're all, I believe all the bearings are the same. They're not like ranged like the OEM ones. So you should be okay. My engine is fine. I beat on my engine a lot. So take it from my word. ACL standard should be okay. ACL race, I mean, you're risking it. Now, you could be okay with ACL race, but I just recommend getting ACL standard, number one, because it's cheaper. So now you're going to want to buy a crankshaft. Now, a crankshaft is one of those other very, very important pieces to the whole entire engine rebuild. And the reason for that is because that's the thing that spins everything and keeps everything moving. So if that thing is bad, scraped, dented, whatever, get rid of it, get another one, and yeah, that's what you have to do. So a crankshaft, I really don't recommend buying one off of eBay or online. Now, I did, but the guy, if you go back, I actually put the video clip probably up now. The guy shipped this crankshaft out in the most, it was the best wrapping of a crankshaft I think I've ever seen. The best wrapping of a fragile piece in a box ever. Like, I don't even know how to put it in words. It was just so perfect. He used I believe it was, what was it? I can't even think right now. It was great stuff. And he used like all these other types of squishy materials so that way it could absorb absorb, being dropped and this, that. It was just great. So, if I were you, I would buy crankshaft somewhere in your local area, but if you can't, eBay is going to be just fine. Just make sure that when you open it, it's not damaged at all, because if it is, give it right back. Next, we have the oil pan. Oil pan's easy. You just buy GSR oil pan. Do not buy an LS oil pan if you're building a VTEC engine. So LS oil pans go to LS engines. VTEC oil pans go to VTEC engines. Do not get them mixed up. One is P72, the other one's going to be like P75 or something. I don't know. So just make sure you look for that number when you're buying that oil pan. Next, you're going to need the oil pump, and that goes on the side of the engine, right in between the crankshaft. So that's another important piece. So now you have everything really for your bottom end. So now if you're using an existing engine, we're going to hop back over now. If you're using an existing engine, never reuse pistons, never reuse bearings, never reuse the oil pump. That's what I've been told, and I didn't want to chance any of that, so I listened to what I was told, and I'm going to tell you guys the exact same thing. Pistons do not hold their true shape over time, so they start to deform after X amount of miles, and by X amount of miles, I mean hundreds and hundreds of thousands of miles. Bearings, those are very important, so you don't want them to be scuffed or scraped. You just want to buy those brand new, and the oil pump goes over time, so it's definitely best to buy an OEM oil pump off of the Honda OEM dealership, and it's going to say Yamada on it. That means that it's, OEM, and just make sure you don't reuse any of this stuff, because it could be very detrimental to your engine. So now that you're ready, you have everything for your bottom end, you want to start assembling now. Or actually, you have everything for your bottom end now, and it's time for you to get everything machined. You have the block all disassembled, and you're thinking to yourself, well, okay, it's disassembled. I have a machine shop in mind. What should I tell them to do? You tell them to have the block bored, honed, and decked. So we're going to go over what each of these does and why you should do them. So the bore is basically extending the diameter of the cylinders. So the OEM bore of a B18C1 is about 81 millimeters, and the B20 is about 84 millimeters. So you really don't want to go, 84. Most people will go to about 81, 81.5. 82 is pushing it. Most people go to 81 or 81.25 or 81.5. So once you do that, the next thing they tell you to do is get the block honed. Now, I always thought it was owned when I first started doing this, but it's actually honed, and that's basically cleaning up the walls and making sure that the new piston rings seat well on the wall, and it gives it like a nice factory cross hatch. And you also see this cross hatch on rotors, brand new rotors. You'll see that cross hatch of lines kind of crisscrossing each other, so that lets you know it's brand new and it's ready to be seated. And lastly, we have decking the block. Now this takes off a very small amount of material off the top of the block to ensure that it has a flat surface. That way, when it comes time to mate the head onto the block with the head gasket in the middle, that there is a perfect seal and that you will not have any leaks whatsoever. You got all that done. It should only cost you really about $150 to $200 to get all that done. Now it's time to actually assemble the bottom end. When it comes time to assembling the bottom end, now I didn't do this myself, so all I can really tell you is just to follow the B-Series book or have somebody assemble the bottom end for you. Now I highly recommend that you have somebody do it for you, because the chances of you screwing this step up is very high, especially if it's your first time. I paid $300 to have my bottom end assembled by Absolute Performance in Finksburg, Maryland, but he actually charged me an additional $100 for the Wiseco piston rings, which were $100 on eBay, so I can't really argue with that. So that would be my best bet. Just have somebody do the rotating assembly for you, and you just do the rest. So next, I recommend going to Zeal AutoWorks and kind of calculate what you want to do as far as choosing everything else for your engine, because not everything will work, especially if you have tight clearances to work with. Always double and triple check your piston to deck clearance. Now my engine was screwed up from the get-go, and my pistons were protruding out my block about 10 thousandths of an inch. So I had to buy a 51 thousandths of an inch head gasket to compensate for that protrusion. You just want to make sure that they don't stick out the block. When it comes time for somebody to install it, or you install it and you notice, or you can feel it with your finger rubbing it across the top that it's sticking out, something went wrong and you need to fix that pronto. Now, if you have the B16 or CTR pistons, they have that giant, point where it sticks up. That's normal because of the high compression, but generally around the outer rim of the piston, if that part's sticking out, then you're in the no-go zone, and you need to find out how much is sticking out. I actually have a video on myself doing the measurement because I didn't trust Absolute Performance's measurement. He told me it was 3 thousandths of an inch, and I wasn't buying that. I had to make sure 100% that it was what it was. So I went back behind him, checked it, and apparently it was 10 thousandths. So that's how I knew I was good and I didn't screw anything up. Now it's time to find a head or work on the head. But before you do that, you need to buy ARP head studs. Now ARP head studs just go into the block, and it kind of like mounts the head onto the block, and you just tighten it down. You just follow these 3 steps. I think it's like 20 or 40, 60, 80 are the steps. So you do that, or 40, 60, 80 I believe was the 3 steps. That's really all you got to do for that. And there's 2 choices in head that you can choose from. So there's the P72 and the PR3. The P72 being GSR and the PR3 being the B16 and or Type R. I mean, if you find a complete head that's already assembled for you and everything, my recommendation would be to just leave it alone. Just go over everything, make sure everything's okay. But other than that, I really think you should leave the head alone, other than, resurfacing it. But that also leads into problems because you're going to have to disassemble the valves if you want to resurface the head. So it looks like you're going to have to disassemble the head. You can do a 3-angle valve job. It's not recommended, it's not mandatory, but you can do it if you want. It just kind of cleans up everything around the valves, making sure everything's brand new and just fresh. But definitely you have to resurface the head, unless you want to take a chance. So now that the head's resurfaced, everything's disassembled. Now we have to go back to what I talked about earlier in the video, which was lapping the valves. So lapping the valves is probably my most hated thing of doing the whole entire engine build. I had to do it 3 or 4 times because I could not get the valves to seal. And you're gonna have to buy a lapping tool and the compounds to kind of grind everything down, and it was just so annoying. I got blisters on my hands. I hated it. I came home every day doing the same thing. It was just awful. As you're lapping these valves, there's videos on this on YouTube, by the way. You're lapping the valves. Once you're done, you install everything back. I actually marked them so I could kind of see where they were lining up at. Then what I did was I actually turned the head on one side and poured rubbing alcohol in all of the intake ports. And as the valves and the valve springs and retainers were all installed, you pour that in there, and if you see any leaks by the valves, that means you got a leak and something's wrong, or you didn't do it right. So, as you can see, this can take a long time. Now, the reason why you use rubbing alcohol is because the viscosity of the alcohol is really, really thin like gasoline. So water has a thicker viscosity, so it's not really a good idea to use water. So that's why you use alcohol, and I really don't recommend using gasoline. Come on, hey, you don't want that. You don't want to mess with that stuff. But alcohol, pour it in there. If it doesn't leak, you're good. If it does leak, you got to pull everything out, restart, and do it all over again. Now that you've done all that, now you can slide the head onto the block, install the cams, install the cam caps, torque everything down, install the Woodruff keys into the cam gears, install the crank pulley with the Woodruff key, and make sure everything's at TDC. And if you don't know already, TDC is top dead center, where everything is pointing upwards. There's like a little marking on the crank pulley and the cam gear that kind of lets you know that this is the very, very top of the engine and where it should always start at. So once you do all that, You just install the gaskets, install the timing belt, making sure that when you install the timing belt that it doesn't jerk or move. So I do recommend buying a cam gear lock or cam gear holder so that way it doesn't turn on you, because if it does and everything's not in top dead center, you're gonna have to pull the timing belt off and restart, which sucks. So once you do that, you install the distributor, you put the valve cover on, you put the oil pan on, tighten the oil pan with the oil pan gasket. Really, that's it. You just rebuilt an engine. Now priming everything and installing everything is a whole nother video that I really don't want to get into right now because this is already a long video. So if you do want to hear how to prime an engine and how to just get everything started in your car, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, and comment down below that you want this video to happen. So I hope you guys enjoyed this very, very long video. I'm sorry that I drew it out so long, but I feel like it's 100% necessary to go over everything that I can possibly think of in my head right now for you guys, so that way you can rebuild your own engine and have no problems and be okay. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.